Do you speak to your kids about money? Is money discussed around your dinner table? If you're not talking to your children and your teens about money, who is? And that brings me very nicely on to our guest today, Leslie Thomas. Hi, Leslie, how are you?
Hi there, Ashley. I am really, really well, thank you. How about you?
I'm good, thank you. Tell us a little bit about you. We met at the lovely Louise's workshop, didn't we, in London?
Yeah.
And we were sat next to each other at lunch, and we'd kind of had a little bit of a chat during the workshop, but at lunch you could not shut us up. And I was like, "You've got to come on the podcast." So, Leslie, tell us about the work that you do, and specifically tell us about why it's so important we need to be having these conversations with our kids all around money and finance.
Absolutely. So I'm Leslie Thomas. I'm the founder of the Money Confidence Academy. I'm a mother of two teenage children, and I work with schools, parents, business owners to help them better understand their relationship with money. And when it comes to schools and parents, I combine practical financial literacy with a money mindset, which leads to self trust, which is, in its purest sense, the creation of money confidence. And I do that quite simply because I'm probably fairly certain your school did not teach you very much about money. My school certainly didn't teach me anything about money. And sadly, in 2025, that same thing continues today. Most schools don't provide any information about money to its students, and those that do tend to do it in a very superficial, non practical, non engaging way. And that's why we have several generations of people and children who do not have a confident relationship with money and therefore don't do as well as they could with money.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because we was just having a little chat before we hit record, and you were saying, like, we still now in 2025 are not teaching these skills. And so I was thinking, okay, what 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 conversation around money in school did I learn? And actually, and I'd say it's exactly the same for my kids who are teens, is it was learn to count with money. That's it. I can't remember anything other than that. There was a little bit talk about mortgages, I think, as I went into high school. But other than that, I have got no clue. And I remember being 22 and going for my first mortgage and having to sit and ask advice because I just had no clue what I was talking about. But also just that, credit debit thing, just the whole. And I think for me, what I really love is it's not just about teaching them about money, but teaching them how to make them, how to make the most of their money, I'm guessing.
Absolutely. I think one of the most shocking facts I've read recently is that amongst 18 to 23-year-olds, they have the highest proportion of debt they've ever had in that age group. And that is because the credit card companies are very good at marketing credit as being cheap forms of borrowing money. They don't actually reveal the full cost of putting your Friday night takeaway onto a credit card, your trip out to the pub on your credit card, that beautiful t shirt, blouse, dress, handbag, whatever. It's only going to cost you a tiny amount per month. They don't talk about the annual percentage rate. They don't talk about how compound interest is applied to what you owe and how that debt can very quickly get out of control. And I have big issue with the fact that schools are not addressing this, but I do understand why schools are not addressing it. And that is because a school sees their job the way they are measured as the number of qualifications, somebody comes out of school with, when actually those qualifications for most children do not help them to create the kind of environment in which they are successful with money. And part of that is because of our emotional relationship with money. So even when those schools do talk about budgeting, saving, investing, actually, those things are important. but those things can be read about on Google, on ChatGPT. You can find out about the practical side of money if you want to. But what is not taught is the emotional side around money. And very often people get into debt, get into trouble with money because of the emotions that come up around money, around the dysregulation that happens to our emotions that then get put on to money to make us feel better about ourselves, to cheer us up when we've had an argument with our nearest and dearest, to celebrate something that we've done in our lives. And everything in society, good example of this, everything in society these days tends to be geared around wanting you to develop that magpie approach, shiny object syndrome. And did you know that Klarna now allows people to pay for their Deliveroo takeaway on credit? Now, that is just bonkers as far as I'm concerned, but it's only when you make that connection, that lovely credit card going into your authorized or unauthorized overdraft is actually going to have a lag effect in terms of how much you're paying and when, but also potentially a detrimental effect in the future on you getting the real credit that you need to buy a house, to rent a house, to buy a car, to build up a business, whatever it might be, investing for your future. And because schools are not having those conversations, and even more importantly, because parents are not having those conversations, if you're not talking to your children about money, absolutely, who is?
Yeah, and that's the scary thing, isn't it? It really is. So there's a couple of things that you've said there that are really important that I want to pick up on. Um, First of all, I heard you say that I can't remember if it was an interview or something that after I'd met you, I'd looked up about takeaways, and my nieces and nephews all got Just Eat vouchers. I bought them all Just Eat vouchers, and I went, whatever you do, don't do it on your credit card. I'll treat you to a takeaway. And do you know what? They were kind of like, oh, but that really, they didn't need to thank me. They should have thanked you because it was for that reason. Um, but the other thing that you've just said there about, the marketing. Now we know that the likes of Instagram, Facebook, all the big social networks, what they do is they, will hone in on practices. So, for instance, if there is selfies deleted off Instagram, then they target that person with beauty products. It must work the same. We're not stupid enough to think that if a teen is searching for different things, that they're not going to target them. So is that what you mean when you're saying if we're not talking to them, who is?
That's exactly it. It's the influencers. It's the people that want to bring attention to the products that they are being incentivized to sell on TikTok. It is those people who are getting something. It might be more likes, more followers. It might be sales commission. There's all sorts of motivators to want to get your teenager's eyes on that particular product. And part of the problem we have now as well is all the in-app purchases that are out there. So when I know from with my children, for example, when they're playing on their Xbox or their PC, there's all sorts of, buy these extra skins so you can change your character into different outfits, buy these different bullets, buy these different cheats for the game. And it might just seem like a pound here, a couple of pounds there, but it all racks up. And unless your child is taught about the fact that these things are all done to draw you in, they're not going to be aware of what they have purchased until they or you suddenly gets an invoice from their mobile phone provider or whoever it might be to say, this is how much you owe. Now, I have a real live example of this. My nephew 10 or so years ago, managed to run up £1,000 bill for my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, literally on an iPad, in-app purchases, and had no awareness that he was doing it because he just thought it's part of the game. And I think that is the issue. These companies know what they need to do to make our children do things that we were not able to do. The technology was not there when we were their age. And because money has changed so much, digital money, utilizing Apple Pay, your mobile phone, etc., it is so easy now to make a purchase without that emotional connection. Because when you have money in your hand, there's an emotional connection to it. So when you're handing over money, you are aware you're handing it over and you're aware you've got less in your hand. But when it's digital, you don't have that same emotional connection. So you could just literally be going purchase, 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 purchase. And then all of a sudden, what you have purchased is way above your affordability level and possibly way above your parents' affordability as well, because very often accounts are connected. So we have a family sharing Apple account. So every time my children make a purchase, it comes out of our bank account because they didn't used to make that connection. Now I make them write down every single in-app purchase they make and tally it up, and I've made them responsible for it. Every time a purchase comes out, I'm tallying it up and I'm taking it out of your allowance. All of a sudden, their behaviour has changed because they're aware of what their behaviour is costing them.
Do you know what? That is so important, isn't it? And I think, taking responsibility for kids and the earlier they can take it, the better. And as you were telling me about that game, that real life kind of example of your nephew there, and then they know what they're doing because nobody's paid for that game. I know, we all know you're talking about Fortnite. Nobody pays for the game. The game is free. So everybody's like, oh, but it's free. It's free. But it's not free. It's never going to be free. It's free to download. It's not free if you want all these things. But one thing that did come up for me was on Snapchat, the kids do streaks. So I might send a picture of my tea to you or my face or whatever. And every day, and me and you will keep that up for 159 streaks or 1,000 streaks, whatever, because that's our friend. Now we've got lots and lots of people who we might do that with, and they do all the time. So the amount of time that the kids are coming back to that is huge because they need to keep up the streaks. So there's a pressure there and an urgency. But also what they do is you can pay if you miss the streak. And I think that's outrageous. Like and it's funny because I'm the same, we have shared. And my eldest has a few times gone, oh, I owe you 50p or I owe this because I've bought, and I've gone, why? And she's gone, because I've lost the streak. And I go, what does it matter? Like you still see her at college, you'll see, but it's that urgency of that, I can't let this go because that is a mark of my friendship. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. It's a money making scheme for Snapchat. And I think, without trying to run down Snapchat, I think it's great on the one hand for some kids, but also they are absolutely plugging in and they do their research to that emotional investment that actually our kids now are buying the snaps so that they don't lose it, so that their friend thinks I've not forgot about you today. Like the emotional baggage around that is just huge.
I agree. I agree. My son went on a Duke of Edinburgh practice walk a couple of weeks ago, and he left his phone with his girlfriend. He was going to give it to me initially, but I don't use Snapchat, so I think he was worried that I would ruin his streak for him, basically. So he gave his phone to his girlfriend to do his snapbacks for him. And how many other people have done that in different situations? In schools now, lots of schools don't allow phones in. And the panic that children had with regards to, I'm going to lose my streak, and the addictive behaviour. And it's not just Snapchat, Duolingo is exactly the same. If you don't do your French lesson over a period of time, you can buy a pass basically. And that is okay for adults if they kind of know, that's what it's about. But when, as you say, you're emotionally connecting your friendship levels to that, and you're allowing people to build up a real addiction, then we wonder why people go on to have gambling addictions. Because again, the telephone is in our hands, and there are lots of 18-year-olds now who are seriously getting in to gambling habits because actually that is what certain social media is developing, is that addiction to a behavior because you're going to have a certain result. And that should be stopped, because it's all very well saying they don't target the under 16s or whatever the age might be. The truth is, it doesn't matter how old your child is, they always manage to get around the rules, basically. And we, unless we as parents are navigating that for our children, Fortnite being a great example, the developers of Fortnite are billionaires. They're not billionaires because it's a free game. They're billionaires because of all the purchases children are unwittingly making, and it's being done underneath the noses of lots of parents because we are not necessarily aware of how gaming companies are behaving. So, this whole thing around financial literacy, relationship with money, actually permeates so many aspects of our children's lives. And I'm sure we'll go on to cover scams, etc., shortly. But if we are not having those conversations, we will end up having to have very different conversations when they or we start to become financially exposed.
Oh, I like that. Financially exposed. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So tell us, Leslie, what can we do to, yes, we can start having the conversations, but where do we start? I was grew up, I grew up in a family where I didn't want for anything, but I kind of knew we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have like huge amount of money, but we always had enough. Like we always had enough. And that was kind of we don't waste it, but we'll always find money. Don't ever have to worry about money. And actually what I found was that I kind of grew up with an attitude of, oh, we'll always have enough, and I deserve this. I deserve that new pair of shoes because I work hard, or I deserve that, takeaway because it's been a long week or whatever. So when I'd kind of left university, that was the mentality when I'd got my first full-time job. And then all of a sudden you realize that actually that's at a cost. So where do we start with our kids? Where do we start having those conversations, and what should we be talking about?
Have those conversations much, much sooner rather than later, because our relationship with money, our thoughts and feelings around money, are formed by the age of 7. So they don't start, they're formed by the age of 7. We start being old enough to understand the concept of money round about the age of 3 or 4, understanding that money represents something that we can exchange for something else that we want. And we can start to have the conversations with regards to how much that thing costs and what we would need to do to be able to buy that thing, whatever that thing is age relevant for. We as parents tend to very much overcomplicate the conversation. When it comes to talking about money, we very often think we need to be a financial advisor, a financial planner, have a degree in finances. We don't. We don't because all the information is out there. What we need to do, very simply, the very first question we ask our child at whatever age we feel it is appropriate is, what would you like to know about money? And that's it. What would you like to know about money? Then recall what you wanted to know about money when you were their age. Because the beauty is, we have been their age. We have that lived experience. And the third thing to remember is we can say to our children, just to let you know, I might not have all the answers, but don't worry, if I don't know, we can find out together. If your child comes home from school and says, Mum, what's Pythagoras' theorem? We don't go, oh my God, and quickly change the subject. We go, how? I'm not sure. Let's go and Google that. Let's go and look it up on whatever you're going to look it up. Let's go and talk to Uncle Tom, who happens to be a financial advisor, not financial, sorry, a maths teacher, and let's ask him, what is Pythagoras' theorem? And we need to take that same approach when it comes to money. We need to encourage our children to be curious, to ask questions, and most importantly, to have confidence in asking questions, to not feel embarrassed that they don't know the answer to a question, because that's what happens to us as parents. We get to an age where we think, flipping heck, I should know that by now. Why can't I answer my child's question around what an ISA is, what a LISA is, what's the difference between saving and investment? What is the kind of size of an emergency fund? Although I don't call it an emergency fund, I call it a soft landing fund because that term emergency can bring all sorts of negative thoughts up for people. So actually, the conversations that we're having can be very productive when we start off from the most simplistic point. What do you want to know? Because that way you are meeting your children absolutely where they are at. Because probably age 11, they won't necessarily want to know about mortgages. But on the other hand, a Go Henry survey that came out last month know that some 8-year olds have started saving a deposit for their first house. So what I'm demonstrating there is we meet our children where they are at rather than throw, and this is a mortgage, and this is a LISA, and this is a different investment classes. You actually just ask them, what do you want to know? And you be prepared to either answer the question if you know the answer, or simply go off and learn together. Because there is no better bonding than when a parent demonstrates to their child they are open for learning. And guess what? We're going to do it together.
And you know what? That's so important, isn't it? That you see that modeled and also that we don't have all the answers, and that's okay too. When my eldest, who is now nearly 18, got her first of like official job, I said to her, the first pay packet that you get, you can blow on anything you want. I said, but after that, you put half away for university. I said, another quarter, I nearly had to check my sums there. Another quarter goes in savings. So you can spend it on clothes or, whatever. And then the other is for you to just play around with. Like that's yours. Now, I didn't check her. Yeah, I kind of asked her, how's it going? How's it, but actually what I noticed was she'd go, oh, guess how much I've got now? Guess how much I've got now for university. And it was really lovely because she's kind of taken that on herself and she's just finished her A level, so she hasn't been working for a month, and it's killed her not to save. It's killed her not to have that money spare. Now, to be fair, she's not been going anywhere, so she's okay. But, just that mentality that she's got around, right, I need to put that away, like I have to put that away, is just brilliant because I never had that. I never had that. Where's your savings? Where's your soft landing money?
And I think as well, what you've done with your daughter is encouraged her to see the joy of saving, but also the responsibility. She had a choice. She didn't have to say, she could have said, yes, mum, I'll do that, and not do that, and go out and splash the cash. But actually, she has built up that sense of emotion around, I'm doing something for my future. Because I think that is something really important we have to do for our children is help them to connect to their future self. Because when they're connecting to their future self and they're saving rather than spending all their money, rather than feeling deprived, they're seeing it as a decision they have made to help themselves in the future. And that makes a big, big difference when you are doing something because you want to recognize the value of by not doing this now. So delayed gratification now means I can do this in the future. And when our children connect in that way, and the same applies if you think about it, because how we do money is how we do everything. You can apply the same to revision. So when I talk to my children, when I am delivering workshops in school, I always talk about how do you want to feel on that day in August when you get your GCSE or your A level results? How do you want to feel when you open that envelope or you open that email? And then they'll say, "Oh, well, I want to feel proud. I want to feel as though I've done okay. I want to know that I can go on to do X, Y, and Z." Well, where do you think that feeling starts? And they think about it. And I go, right, I'll help you. That feeling starts with what you're doing in the classroom now. So if you're messing around in the back of the classroom, is that going to be helping you to be having those feelings of joy and happiness and relief on that day in August? Or is it likely going to lead to you feeling really disappointed and regret? And when we do that with money as well, we get them to project in a really positive way. I've saved for this. I've bought this for myself. I've been able to take responsibility and make decisions and create the evidence. And this is a really important one, create the evidence that I am good with money. Because very often, those people who are least successful with money are not successful because they don't believe they can be successful. So they create a self-fulfilling prophecy. See, I told you I wasn't good with money. Rather than, see, mum, look at that. I'm good with money. And I think that is a really, really powerful gift that we can give to our children to demonstrate we trust them to make the right decision. Because when somebody trusts you, you create self trust. And when you have self trust, you do the right thing for yourself.
Do you know what, Leslie? I think it's for me, I could sit and listen to you all day because I think, why are we not doing this already? Why is this not in schools? Why are we not creating confident savers and spenders? But one thing that you just said there, which I just thought, yeah, that is amazing, is around the fact that when we give them that trust, right, and they become, look, I am good with money, because we always talk about those who aren't, don't we? I am good with money. It's a win-win, isn't it? Because if your kids are good with money, they're not going to be on elastic. They're not going to be keep coming back to the bank of mum and dad. So it's a win for them. And I talk a lot about future proofing our kids, and for me, this is a massive skill that they need, and the kind of value that we have is about meeting them where they're at, which is exactly what you say, is ask them what they need to know. But actually, why would we not future proof them, but also future proof ours? We often don't have a little pot in case, Jimmy splits up with a girlfriend 10 years down the line, and they've bought a house together, but she's took everything. We don't have that pot, do we? So, but if we make them more confident with their own money and make them more responsible, the kind of decisions that they make often lead that they don't come back for a handout.
And that is so, so true. The whole thing that we need to do. I remember seeing on a Facebook group relatively recently a parent asking about what bank account do your teenage children have? As she wanted them to, they were, I think, 16. So they were kind of just beyond the Go Henry stage, basically, because Go Henry is brilliant for, younger children, probably starts to feel a little bit too adolescent for 16 plus. And somebody commented they liked, I think it was Lloyd's was mentioned. And the same mum said, no, I don't want them to have that. I want to be able to see what they're spending. And my reply back was, no, you want them to manage their money. You want them to know that they have to look after their money, be able to budget. But if they don't, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're not going to have enough money for that month. Because as a 16-year-old, you can't get into an overdraft. You can't get a credit card. So actually, that is the time when you have to let your child off the reins and to manage their bank account themselves. Because what happens if they do go to university? What comes automatically with a student bank account? Usually an authorised overdraft, and very often, if they want to have it, a credit card. What happens if they've not ever had any responsibility for their money, sorry, because mum has been overseeing their account? All of a sudden, they have got no experience by which to manage that money. So as soon as both my children were 16, they had their own bank accounts that I had no sight of whatsoever. And so far, they haven't had to come to me. If they had come to me, I would just see that as, let's have a conversation as to why you are now short of money. What have you bought? Have you been accounting for? What has happened? But they've learnt in a safe way. And if we don't allow our children to manage their understanding of money and budgeting and how they spend, etc., then we are opening them up to a much, much bigger problem when all of a sudden, age 18, they can do whatever they want to with whatever bank account, basically.
Do you know, that's such wise words, Leslie. Like, I'm sat here listening to you, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, right, what more could I do for our kids? So my eldest has her own bank account now at 16. We have Starling, so they have like a pot within, which is a brilliant bank account, and it's really good, and they can put savings, spaces in there. But the youngest, he's quite funny with money. He would spend it faster. She's a real saver. And I think actually that's down to me. I've not had that conversation with him because he hasn't got an official job. He washes cars in the village, and so he ends up with lots of cash. But I haven't had that conversation, because I think, oh, well, he's not officially earning. But actually I should have already had it. Like, so, for me, that's really give me that, like, we think sometimes we're doing the right thing. We think, oh, we've got that. But actually, I should be having that conversation right now. Leslie, can I just say, honestly, I think not only from a personal point of view, that light bulb moment, hold on, I'm not upholding everything, but also just you are so passionate about teaching these skills. How could, if we've got a school or if we've got a parent, where can we find out more information about you? Because I think the difference between you and, say, other people is that you're accessible, you talk common sense, you've got kids of your own. Where can we find out more about you and what you're doing?
That's very easy. Go to my website, themoneyconfidenceacademy.com. I have, what's the word I'm looking for? A campaign. What's the word I'm looking for? Campaign called Impact 1 Million Teens. And that's the start, by the way. I don't get to the million and kind of go, that's it, I've stopped now. That is the start, because I want every single teenager in this country, and before that, and after it probably as well, such is the impact of these conversations not happening, actually have access to clear, common sense information that combines financial literacy, money mindset, because it creates money confidence. So if you go to my website, there's details there of Money at Home, which is the program parents can buy for their teenage children. I have Money at School, which is a financial literacy program for schools, for them to deliver online to their schools. And in July, middle of July, 17th of July, my book, Parents, Let's Talk Money. If you're not talking to your teen about it, who is? That comes out, is being published as well. So there's a lot, and there's also lots of free resources on my website as well. So there's lots of different ways, But the most important thing people can do, parents listening, is to just literally ask their child, what do you want to know about money? And be led by your child. Because there is no greater person to learn what they want to learn than asking that question.
That is amazing. So get over to Leslie's website and have a look at the free resources. I mean, she's got loads on there. And actually, if you're in a PTA, if you're a teacher, go and talk to, your curriculum manager. Go and talk to your head and say, this is something we should be doing. And it doesn't have to be a business class that it fits into. This can be part of your PHSE, HSE. This is this is the life skills for our kids. And and you know what? You will thank your future self for it. Your wallet will definitely thank you for it. But as a school, like, set yourself apart. Become part of that million kids. It's really funny hearing you say that as well, because our hashtag is reach a million kids. So you know what, Leslie, between us, we better bloody reach them. I'm telling you. Um. So yeah, and please, if you've got any questions for Leslie, or if you've got any questions for me, reach out and we will be more than happy to answer them. In the show notes, so I will put all Leslie's details for you anyway, so it's easy to access. So whether that's on YouTube where you watch us, whether it's on your podcast provider, look for the show notes and they'll be there. And if you're on our newsletter, it will also be there on Saturday. All right. Take care, everybody. Leslie, one final word from you.
I just really want to say to parents and to you, actually, Ashley, as well. You said, oh, I haven't spoken to my son, and slightly berated yourself for not doing that. As parents, we really are doing the very best that we can do in probably one of the most transformative times that we have gone through, in terms of what is happening, with AI, how money has become totally digital, how social media has pervaded all our lives. So you, we, everybody else is navigating a lot. You've created that awareness, you've recognized what you want to do differently. So just celebrate that fact that you've gone, there is a little bit more I can do, and I'm actually going to go and do it. Because when we have those light bulb moments, that is when we can create massive change for those around us, which has massive change for us as well. So don't be hard on yourself. Just go and do what you know is right for your children. And I encourage all listeners to do the same.
Thank you so much, Leslie. You are so lovely. I'm not sure my youngest is going to thank you for this conversation, because the money that's sat on his bedside now is going to be split into three. But his future self would definitely thank you. Thanks for listening, guys. Lots of love from Leslie and myself. And any questions, drop us a comment and we will get back to you ASAP. Take care of yourselves.